Hello, and welcome to our series on the foundations and applications of distance education. Each of these short programs is designed to provide a concise introduction and overview to a single aspect of distance learning. Our series is funded by the federal government as part of the Iowa Distance Education Alliance, Iowa Star Schools Project. And throughout this series, we'll be taking advantage of the fiber optic technology of the Iowa Communications Network. Today's topic is the student's role in distance education. Just as in any classroom, the student has certain responsibilities. Participation, study skills, and contact with the teacher are important aspects in the learning process. So, how should the student handle these responsibilities at a distance? Here to give us a student's perspective is Dawn Rushinsky, a graduate student at Iowa State University. Dawn, I know you have some thoughts prepared, so why don't you begin?
Thanks, Dr. Johnson. I've really been looking forward to talking about distance education and how students can be more successful when they take classes from distance teachers. I'd like to talk about three things today. First, I'll explain what I believe are the advantages and disadvantages of taking distance courses from the student's point of view. Next, I'll describe some of the things students can do in classes to make it easier for them. Last, I'll suggest some outside of class responsibilities of learners, topics like homework and studying. Before I begin, though, I'd like to explain why I'm sitting here in the classroom rather than there at the teacher's podium. Students have found that it is possible to be actively involved, to speak and be seen the same way you can in a regular classroom. Different distance education systems with different hardware affect what the student does, but in all systems, it is possible for students to be involved in what happens in the classroom. First, let's talk about what many have found to be advantages of distance education. Most important are the opportunities to take courses that wouldn't have been offered otherwise. For instance, before distance education, when there weren't enough students in the school who wanted to take a course, the course just wasn't offered. With the completion of the Iowa Communications Network and more than 100 distance classrooms, enough students can usually be found and courses can be offered. Another advantage is that distance education offers students the opportunity to learn firsthand about other people, other places, and other things outside of their own community. Now, as great as distance education is, there are some challenges to being a distance student. First, it takes work. Maybe not more work, just a different kind of work. Students have to plan ahead more, they have to ask more questions, and be better organized too. It's the same for teachers as well. Another challenge of distance education is that students aren't used to learning this way. Many traditional classes don't use as much technology now. Most students like their distance classes very much, though sometimes they wish the classes were offered in their own school instead of over TV. As I said, the most important thing about distance education may be the opportunities it offers. And although distance education may have some disadvantages, it's like almost everything else in school and in life. Good things are worth the effort. Now, let's talk about some of the ways students can make distance classes easier for themselves. First, it's important to be organized, to be prepared for class. Then, during class, students should try to ask questions. Sometimes the push-to-talk microphones are intimidating, but asking questions keeps you involved. It's also helpful to sit where students can see the teacher and the teacher can see them. That's important because when students have questions, they can raise their hands and be called on. With some forms of distance education, students are able to see and hear the teacher at the same time, but in other cases, the teacher can't see them. The students sit near the telephone so they can easily call to ask questions. This isn't the case, of course, with the ICN, but in either case, you really have to try to be part of the class in order to learn the most. It's also helpful if students get a chance to handle the classroom equipment. They get to see how easy the equipment is to use, and this makes it more likely that they will use the equipment later and maybe have a better attitude about it. Students find out that distance education isn't really as mysterious as some people think it is. Students also find the use of presentation handouts useful. These guides to the daily activities help keep the students and teacher on the same page throughout the class session. They also eliminate tedious copying, allowing the student to become more involved and thinking about what's being taught. In many ways, distance education classes are pretty much like regular classes. The more involved the student is, the more he or she will learn. Outside of regular class time, there are some things that help make the classes better too, like study groups. Some distance teachers assign everyone in the class to local study groups. Students find it helpful to make friends with their classmates and study together with them. They share notes and answer each other's questions. They still do their own homework, but the study group helps them keep up. Students also find that access to the teacher outside of class is helpful. It's important for students to find out from the teacher how to do this. Some use the telephone, some use computers, while others use the distance education classroom itself. Well, Pam, I could go on, but one thing the distance education experts stress is to not try to cover too much. I hope I've helped. I really think that by taking an active role in class and by coming to class prepared, you can learn just as much when the teachers are 100 miles away as you can when they're in your own school.
Dawn, do you think that all the technology around you gets in the way of the student?
Not really. Our society is getting used to camcorders and computers more each day, especially kids. This is really more of the same thing. And even if there is some apprehension at first, it goes away after you get into the course of ways.
Dawn, thanks for joining us today and giving us the view from the other side of the instructor's console. And thank you for watching the Foundations and Applications of Distance Education.